Hello and welcome to this Mastering the Machine webinar for the 7th of March 2025. Our topic today was Weintek, also pronounced Weintek, with Keith Moyer and Nikki Gonzales, who both work for the company. And lots of good extra information here today in addition to HMIs, which is what they're known for. Hope you enjoy it. So welcome to this, the 84th webinar for Mastering the Machine, sponsored by the Automation Academy and IO Central for the 7th of March 2025. And today's topic is Weintek, which I have used Weintek touchscreens in the past, but that's the only thing that I've used from Weintek. So hopefully today we'll be learning lots of new things, including how to pronounce Weintek or Weintek or Vintek, which I suspect in Austria is Vintek, but we'll see. So what is the Automation Academy, the sponsor of this webinar? It is a subscription-based website. We have training videos for Allen Bradley, Siemens, Beckhoff, and Omron PLCs. Lots of PLC training things out there, but we do have a lot more than that. We have a library of training and tech documents, some software that you can download, actually including EasyBuilder. It's been on there for quite a while. I think it's an older version of it, but I think I put it on 3 or 4 years ago. EasyBuilder is a great thing to learn on, right? Because you can create screens, and it's very similar to some other packages. We do have a community with interest groups on it. IO Central takes constant monitoring to make sure that people aren't spamming it. A lot of people join up and then put advertisements and things like that in the chats. So I constantly have to go in there and clean that out. The Mastering the Machine webinar was named after a document that I put out. It's been probably 13 years ago about custom machine building, and it has to do with how do custom machine builders quote machines, right? Where do they start from? So if you're somebody who's ordering machines and specifying machines, this is a good document to download. And I just named this webinar after that document. So that's kind of where that came from. So, I still have the old school system as integration up here. It should say Weintek, which the next screen does, but somehow this got left. So it's not all just about PLC programming, right? There's a lot of other stuff that you need to know if you are going to deal with PLCs. Notice that it's on one of the middle tiers here. So we learn all this bottom level stuff in high school. If we're lucky, maybe we get into some physics and chemistry, maybe some logic. If we're really lucky, we get electronics and things like that. And then most of this other stuff, fluid power, motors, digital analog, communications, and sensors, you get that in tech schools or just through on-the-job training, right? But you can see that as you get up in these levels, things get much more complex. Motion control, general controls, lots and lots of details there. Machine vision, PLCs, I kind of put these on the same level because they're kind of standalone elements that you have to program. In addition, I've got HMIs up here on a higher level because we're approaching the enterprise level. And then databases, AI, lots of other things. And then I put these question marks up here because, right, you are going to be learning things that are particular to your field. So what are those things? You're going to have to answer that for yourself. So moving right along, I did say the little header here it does say Weintek here. These HMI screens are the only time I have dealt with Weintek or Weintek products. They've had EasyBuilder based, touch screens for probably 12 years now, and anymore, this is all they use on any of their machines. So they have Siemens, they have Allen Bradley, they have GE. You can see these were mostly done in 2020, and then this bottom screen here is one I recently modified. Actually, if you look at this, you can see this complicated mess of conveyors and things like that, and this is what it used to be, right? This was one of the screens in 2020, and I had to modify it into this. I don't really know what I'm going to fill the center in with. I had to fit everything on the screen, and I wanted to make sure that it resembled, what they already had, because the users of this machine are used to what they have. You really don't want to change things massively. Even though I did pretty much write all these screens, there were some other screens in the plant in the past that I basically used my techniques to duplicate them. And every once in a while, I get into some kind of humorous things here, like press me, right? This actually brings up a pop-up screen, right? Which you can't do on every HMI. It brings up a movable pop-up screen with a picture of the tank and lots of details on what the tank is doing. This is a mini CIP system. It's actually a Micrologix 1400. So on that note, this is all I really have dealt with Weintek. So I'm going to turn this over to you folks. If anybody has a screen they want to share. By the way, Nikki and Keith Moyer, right? And I see
Good
Vinny.
morning, everyone.
Yeah.
I think we got Vinny here, and I know this goes out on YouTube, so it's not just everybody that's here. But we have at least some. I know Vinny uses these HMIs quite a bit, so he probably has his own examples and is not a beginner in that sense. But I think we maybe also surprised him with some of the other products that Weintek carries that most people are not familiar with. And I'll let Keith kind of run through. He's been with Weintek much longer than I have. So I am Nikki Gonzales. I'm a director of business development. I just started about a couple months ago. So I also kind of just thought of Weintek, or Weintek as I used to say it, like everybody else that I know, as an HMI company, which I think, to its core, it is an HMI company. They talk about themselves, and if you read the about Weintek on the back of the catalog, it says, we're experts in human machine interfaces. But there are, some products that kind of go along with making the HMIs more powerful, be able to connect with more things, be able to do more with them. So getting into adding a controller to them, as well as connectivity, using them as gateways or protocol conversion tools. And then we have a whole line of remote IO, as well as headless HMIs, which allow you to use the Easy Builder Pro, but you're not tied to the screen selection size that's available in the actual HMI with the screen on it. And then gateway products. And I'll let Keith kind of walk through the product line. But I just wanted to show, this is the only demo that I've had shipped to me so far, but this is one of our remote IO coupler modules. We have standalone couplers for Ethernet IP, for EtherCAT, and a couple of others. And then you can have slices for remote IO, input, output, analog, digital, or temperature. And then we have a couple of these ones, which are kind of combination. They're very high density. So this is like an Ethernet IP or Modbus TCP coupler, along with 24 inputs and outputs. And this is like $300. You get quite a bit.
Let me stop sharing here so that people can see this. I've got my screen up, and I haven't figured out a way to just turn off sharing. So if you guys actually take the screen, you should be able to. Let me see. I don't see anything here that is stop sharing. I see share.
Well, it does say to me disabled share. You cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
That's not what I have selected on here. Let me see. Host who can share, host only, all participants. One can share at a time. There we go. But then it says multiple. You can start sharing, all participants. You guys should be able to just hit your share and try to select something.
Okay, I don't have a screen to share. I just wanted to hold this up to my camera here because I have it in my hand. I'll let Keith, do you want to give it a shot and see if you can share something, or does it tell you the same thing?
No, happy to. Okay, replace current share. There it shows up, right?
There you go.
There we go. Is that showing up? It looks like it is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll leave that back
Perfect.
there with my plants.
No, well, thanks for having us on, and I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's always great for me to see. I love seeing the examples that you put up there, right? I love to see Weintek in the wild, so to speak, and here. And I've been with the company for almost 7 years now, and I still get a kick out of when I see the product in use by our customers, or maybe that I haven't even met. Like I said, I didn't know you were doing this, Frank. That's I think really, really cool. So we're out there in more places than most people realize. So when I started with the company, a lot of people, when I talked to them, hadn't heard of Weintek. And now they have, right? So I'd say most of the people I've talked to have at least heard of us. They may not be super familiar with our product line and those kind of things, but they've at least heard of us. And we've been doing this a really, really long time. In the about as long as I've been in the automation industry. We've been doing this for a really long time. We manufacture our own product. We don't brand label it. We don't buy it from somebody else. We don't contract manufacture it. We can kind of control it soup to nuts. And I think that's a real advantage in this current market, and especially if you live through the kind of 2020 stuff. I think one of the things our customers like to know is this right here. They like to know that we are a U.S. crew. They like to know we have stock here in the U.S., that we have engineering support here in the U.S., and we're really, really nimble and efficient. We ship fast. Like I said, we stock heavily and we ship fast. I try to train our partners out there that, if you just need a handful of units, you don't even need to ask whether it's in stock. There's about a 99% chance that it's in stock here in the U.S. So it's just a good thing to know, right? For sure. You talked a little bit about the software already. So, and please chime in if you've got, I'm not going to spend a lot of time diving into the deeps. We could definitely have an engineer do something like that on the software. But I think the main thing to talk about on the software is the fact that it is free. And I think one of the assumptions you get, and we all do in life, right, is that if something is free, then it must be stripped down, right, or basic, or maybe not supported very well. And it really couldn't be further from the truth. Really, really couldn't be further from the truth. It's pretty extensive, and I've heard that over my time here. I've consistently heard from people who started using our product that it is very extensive, that they can do things with our HMI that they never even thought to do with an HMI, right? Instead of just being a screen, it's got a ton of power, and the software's got a lot of functionality within it. So we spend a lot of time, Nikki and I and our sales team, educating people and going out and talking about these things, right? That's what we do. That's kind of how I see myself. I have a sales title, but really I consider myself a little bit of an evangelist, and a little bit of somebody who's out there to kind of help spread the good word, so to speak, about Weintek, right? So
let me interject if that's okay, Keith, with the story.
Absolutely.
So I just came back. We were discussing earlier, Frank, thank you for asking. I just got back from Minnesota. I was visiting a company called Azerel. They make this flexible feeding platform. And the general manager there, Matt Hunt, used to work for a distributor that sold Weintek. And he was trying to give me, he was very enthusiastic about like, I can set you up with a meeting with my brother works at this machine building company and you should go talk to them. And he's like, normally, it's none of my business. And I would have just said, good luck and good luck with your new job. But he's like, I know how great this product line is and that most people don't know. And the most incredible thing is when they look at the line, they think that it's a high-end, expensive product. And again, that's kind of like a hidden or a secret in the industry to a lot of people because, in our industry, we generally don't have, pricing blasted all over the websites or in the catalogs, right? You have to go get a quote from your distributor. But looking at our stuff, he was like, this is, has nothing to do with my job, but I just want more people to know that it's incredible. He used to sell Mitsubishi HMIs. And he was like, I still can't believe the price point of these things. And I think most people walk away thinking that it's going to be something super high end and expensive and they won't be able to afford it. And I also did a survey of controls engineers that I am connected with on LinkedIn. And probably about half of them had actually never heard of Weintek. So I think there's still a lot of the good word to be spread. So again, thanks, Frank, for letting us come on and do that to your community here. And we have coming up, And I unfortunately haven't, I'm going to schedule it on LinkedIn today, but it should be March 20th that we're going to do a live demo of the Easy Builder Pro on the Automation Ladies LinkedIn Live. So if anybody does want to see a full demo, kind of the software, one of our engineers is going to go ahead and like show some of that and how it works. Go ahead, Keith. Sorry.
Yeah.
I can't help myself.
That's great. As people who talk a lot, it's sometimes nice to have a break so that I can catch my breath because I talk a lot, right? So, and all good points. And I was excited to see Vinny. I won't put Vinny on the spot on here, but Vinny uses our product quite a bit and could probably speak to a lot of the technicalities of it, even better than I can. But I think, you can see on the screen there, one of the things that I think is extremely, hi, Vinny, you popped in there. I think, one of the strengths is that I've found, and one of the values that we bring is the flexibility of the architecture and the flexibility to be able to do a lot of things, right? So whether that's in the feature sets that we have within the software and the hardware, or within, this, right? So the amount of communication drivers we have, I'm continually floored when I get a call from a customer or distributor partner, and they say, "Hey, what about this?" I got one the other day, and it escapes me now, but it was a brand of PLCs that I'd heard of, but it's fairly obscure. And we had 3 different drivers for it for 3 different models, right? So I don't think there's anybody on the planet that has the depth of protocols that we do and can communicate with as many types of devices directly as we can. And that gives you a lot of flexibility in the design process, right? So if you need to switch PLCs or if you have projects using different PLCs, it gives you a ton of flexibility. So one thing again, kind of staying on that flexibility note, I like to talk a little bit about is the different ways to put our product together, right? Obviously, we sell HMIs, right? That's the bulk of our business. We're HMI guys at heart. That's the core of what we do. And a big part of our business, obviously. And we kind of talked about the drivers already, and it gives us the ability to communicate with, whoever your favorite PLC brand is, right? Or whoever the project dictates that you use that PLC. And so there's a ton of capability there. But what a lot of people don't realize, and Nikki kind of alluded to already, is that we have a very solid remote I/O product, right? So I've got a lot of customers that are either spec'd or they're in love with their PLC HMI combination. They don't want to change. But we've got a solution here that brings some value to them, and that is our remote I/O solution. Very cost effective. Very affordable, like I said, very cost effective. I said that 3 times now, right? And compact, easy to use. Again, free software to get it all set up. And it works with multiple different types of PLCs. Now, these do require a certain communication protocol because that's hardwired kind of into that coupler module. But we cover the major ones. And the primary one, of course, being Ethernet IP and Modbus TCP IP, right? So those are the big ones. They allow us to do it. We also have an EtherCAT and a CAN communication module. And I think most of the people watching your show have an understanding of what remote I/O is and how distributed I/O works. But I do like this graphic because it does kind of just ram home what you can do with these. So it's a full line, right? Whether you need digital I/O, whether you need relay outputs, whether you need analog or combo modules, thermocouple modules, and they're extremely cost effective. And most importantly, I love that Nikki actually physically showed our module, but our new combo modules that came out in the last, say, year and a half, they just pack a ton of punch, right? So it's got that Ethernet IP and Modbus TCP IP coupler capability with 40 onboard I/O. So for $300, 40 onboard I/O and the ability to add more, I don't know that there's anybody that can touch that on the market currently. So.
Yeah, and with our pricing, obviously this is, March 2025, but this year we either kept all of our pricing the same or lowered the pricing, which this module
right?
used to be $330 or $329 last year, and now it's $299.
Yeah, 379 actually. So we just lowered the price on these modules, yeah, by about $80. So we're continually looking at the market. not only from a manufacturing side and looking where we can keep our costs down, but we're also continually here in the U.S. looking at the market and making sure that we're bringing value to our customer base, to the engineers that want to use us, right? So anyway, here's the digital version, I guess, of the guy that Nikki was showing, just for the grins. So the other way to kind of put our components together, kind of keeping with this flexibility, is with Codesys. And I'm sure your users are familiar with what Codesys is. Codesys has had an interesting, I think, kind of blow up over the last 4 or 5 years. When I first started talking about Codesys, most of the people I talked to, I would say 90% of the engineers I talked to had no idea what it is. I'll pause for a second because Codesys, it's kind of like Weintek, or any of that. It seems like our industry has it's pretty rife with dual pronunciations, right? So whichever way you say it, yeah, whichever way you say it.
They changed their name halfway. I think you guys stayed the course from the beginning. Codesys was Codesys, and now they call themselves Codesys.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I've always said Codesys because I used to work for Festo a while back, and they were one of the companies putting Codesys in their controllers.
I don't know if the Germans had an official press release. I wouldn't be surprised, but when you talk to the people there now, the ones that have been there for a while still slip in Codesys a lot, but they encourage Codesys.
Yeah,
I guess that makes sense.
There's actually an acronym, Control Design System, and that's
where it came from.
Right, that's where it came from.
Right.
Maybe they're trying to appeal to younger coders that it's a coding system or something.
Right. Hey, I'm guilty of it. You'll still catch me saying Weintek because that's kind of how I started before, because I was familiar with us before I came to work for us.
Right.
And so you'll still catch me saying Weintek instead of Weintek. So,
but hey, Keith, somebody said, because I made a post about this on LinkedIn asking people what they call it.
Right.
And I found some other flavors that I hadn't even thought of or heard as well. But somebody said, oh, Keith Moyer would say, would you rather be a winner or a whiner? Is that something you say?
Yeah, that one's going to haunt me forever, right?
I like it. We do enough like hard technical work and have to deal with crap a lot in this line of work, in a factory. So it's nice to be able to have a little bit of sense of humor, have some fun with the people that you work with. So thank you.
Right. So I guess for those in your audience who may not know what Codesys is, it's an IEC 61131 standard PLC programming language. So it allows you to use ladder logic, function block, structured text, sequential flow, IL, kind of all those standard and ways to program your PLC in a format that is brand agnostic, so not tied to any one manufacturer. It is I think kind of revolutionary in that regard, right? I think people get locked into an ecosystem for one reason or another because that's how the systems have been designed, and Codesys is kind of trying to break that. For us as HMI guys, we weren't going to reinvent the wheel. PLCs are not new. We've been manufacturing HMIs and HMI software since almost the beginning of HMIs, and we weren't going to get into the PLC route 50 years after, or 60 years, or whatever it is, and so we adopted Codesys, right? We found a platform that makes sense, and so one of the cool things about all of our CMTX series HMIs is the ability to add a Codesys activation to the HMI and make that HMI basically a soft PLC. And so when you couple that with the IO that we previously talked about, you get a pretty powerful, pretty affordable HMI and PLC combination. And so it's not for every application, right? But there are applications where it makes sense. And it kind of goes back to that flexibility, that kind of a la carte method of being able to put together our product almost like building blocks. And then lastly, we do have an actual Codesys-based PLC for those kind of traditionalists out there or if the application so dictates, right? If you want to use an HMI and then a traditional kind of DIN rail mount PLC, we've got a Codesys-based processor that also works with the same IO products. So if you want that kind of two-piece kind of standard architecture, we've got a solution for that also. And of course, you could use it with anybody's HMIs, but why would you? Hey, question, Frank, anything that comes up? I know you're already kind of familiar with our product, but is there anything when you see the IO product, are there questions that you think maybe your listeners might have?
Not really. I think most people are pretty familiar with what remote IO is. I'm very interested in it because for a long time I've been searching for an agnostic IO system that's not made by Allen Bradley or Siemens or whatever, to be able to add to existing systems or create new systems. And I think, you know, like Vinny's in the agricultural world, and for him having a standalone HMI just connected to IO out in the field seems like that would be super, you know, valuable without having to build a big control cabinet and all that kind of stuff. So very interesting to me, but until I would use it, I don't know what questions I would have.
Sounds like we need to get you some so you can give it a shot and then follow up with your questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things, you know, that happened to me recently, I upgraded to a newer version of software and I opened an old program with that, one of my, you know, ABD programs down here, and it had some things on it that were new, and you had to either disable the screen. I think it was like something on screen 20. Maybe it was a email or something like that. And until you had configured that email server and everything, you know, it was going to say, hey, this is a blank screen. It was very easy. There are a whole bunch of screens, as you guys are going to show when you do the Automation Ladies things. I just delete the screen. It's still there, right? If you open a new project, you're still going to have whatever was on screen 20, the email type thing. But because they don't use that in this plant, it's very easy to just get rid of some of the template stuff. But I thought it was really cool because we are moving that way. In this plant, we have ignition everywhere, and we are moving towards having email alerts and things like that. Well, if you can do it without going through ignition, and it's just out on the line, and it would, you know, get through the, I don't know, SMTP server or whatever to send a text or I think that's super valuable. That's something that doesn't seem to be on a lot of the proprietary HMIs. You know, there's ways to get to it, but it's not on the HMI itself when you get to some of the big boys, right? The big PLC manufacturers.
No, it's a valid point, and I think one of the things that I really appreciate, and I when I talk to my customers, they really appreciate is the fact that I'm not throwing shade at the other guys, but the fact that we don't have these kind of paywall setups where, hey, at this level you get these features, and then you gotta pay to get to this next level, and you gotta pay to then get to the next level. There's some feature set differences between our series of HMIs, right? But we don't kind of set up these artificial paywalls. And hey, if you want to do this, that's fine, but you can't do it with this model. You got to buy the more expensive model, or the more expensive software, or the more expensive package. So it's one of the things that I'm pretty fond of as a long ago controls engineer. So
one of the things I want to mention about Code Assist, because I've run into this, it depends on whose Code Assist you get, but a lot of companies that have Code Assist PLCs have it's a separate programming software like PLC Engineer or something like that. And when it compiles, it doesn't always match up with all of your other Code Assist devices. I believe maybe some of the individual components do, but as a full compiled software, I've run into some problems with that. My first thing I ran into there was trying to, you know, Beckhoff kind of came from Code Assist, and I tried to turn a TwinCat 3 program into a Code Assist program, and no go. There are ways to do it. You can copy things, but the file extensions are all different. So I'm curious as to whether you have a completely separate Code Assist programming software, or if it's just raw Code Assist, and then of course you have to buy a runtime license to run on that's what you're paying for on the HMI.
Right.
But do you know if you're extensions? Is there a separate software? Is it just Codesys?
No, it's just code. That's a great question, and I wasn't even aware that there's other people out there, kind of forcing you into their. And I shouldn't say forcing, but utilizing a separate software. No, we use Codesys, right? So we don't dictate anything different, or that you're using a version of Codesys. You're using the raw Codesys. We do highly recommend, the version level you need to be on for that. And we tend to stay maybe a version or two behind, right? Let them work the kinks out before we kind of go up. But yeah, you can find all that in our forum and our website. But yeah, we do recommend it. But you're right; it's a great point. It is just Codesys, right? It's not Codesys, a branded version of Codesys, or our version of Codesys. It's just Codesys.
It seems to be. I mean, like Wago got rid of their branded version and went back.
Okay, I was about to ask.
What's that?
I said, okay, I was about to ask that because I know you use Wago quite a bit.
Yeah, no, they got rid of that just before I got into it. So all the Gen 2 controllers are just, vanilla Codesys. And they're on like 3.5.19.7. The Weintek, I believe, is on 3.5.15. I don't remember what server's back. But I did just do the ones I actually do in 3.5.19.7, but you just have to downgrade the Ethernet driver because the library, the newer library doesn't work. Otherwise, it works fine. But just because I'm too lazy to download another version.
Excuse me.
So Beckhoff, yeah, they're based on Codesys, but they have their own flavor, and they're actually coming out with something new, PLC++.
Yeah, that has nothing. They use like the Codesys compiler in the back, but past that, they use Visual Studio as their IDE and everything, versus like if you take like So Machine or whatever Schneider calls it now, EcoStruxure Machine Control Expert, I think. It's a mouthful.
Automation Expert, if I remember correctly. We do have, they did a demo of that.
One.
Oh, that's a different one. Yeah.
But there's Machine Expert only is Codesys. Okay. The Control Expert is Unity. And then there's however many more.
Automation Expert is
Machine Basic is different too.
Yeah.
But Expert, yeah, that's Codesys with their colors on top of the IDE and a lot of things that don't work outside of it. So hopefully more people see the light and get rid of their. I know why they do it, and Wago, they lost all the auto configuration stuff when they went away from it, where they built a whole bunch of tools on top of it that if you were using only their hardware, you drag and drop it and it did a lot of the work for you. And now you have to manually do some of that, but it's really not hard, and they don't have to support it as much. You got fewer bugs, and you can keep up with a more current version of. You're not lagging a year or two behind on releases. So
I believe the Bosch Control X is also not base Codesys. I think to convert it, I've heard some people that have problems converting it to regular Codesys if they wanted to use it on a different controller. So it's good to hear that you do have a good vanilla Codesys. I think that hopefully in the future is going to be what people, migrate to.
Yeah, and the hardware agnostic part is there, but of course any libraries you use that are hardware dependent are going to break. So, but I've taken Wago programs and put them to Weintek. They're relatively simple, but you have to change a few things. But the code you write is fine. It's just when you start referencing different libraries, that part has to be cleaned up when it gets moved.
Very cool. Any other questions, comments? Anybody? I see Rolando lurking there in the background. Any questions? It is an interesting platform. I think getting rid of the PLC and being able to do the front end with the 40IO remote IO module, I can find, I build a lot of trainers for customers. Right now I'm doing a kind of a Fisher Technique little toy factory, and it takes probably somewhere close to 40IO, and I happen to be doing it on Siemens, and the installs for Siemens are just, too much security, too many different things to install, and I would really appreciate something that was just straightforward and simple. Unfortunately, the customer chose this, so kind of stuck
Yeah, I
with
was about
that.
to ask if that's okay about you have trainers behind you, right? Is that up
Yes.
there on your wall?
Yep. Two of them are Alan Bradley. One is actually is a code assist from Automation Direct, that I bought and did like basically nothing with. I messed with code assist, but then other things get in the way. So yeah, I even have a Raspberry Pi up there, which I believe you can also run code assist on. A Raspberry Pi with a little Arduino connector, and I do some wireless stuff with that. So yes, I build trainers and with little plastic factories. I'm kind of a distributor for the Fisher Technique, which is a German company. So
Have you done a webinar on those? I would love to see
I
that
think
stuff.
in the past I brought it up. Yeah, I mean I have some videos and things like that of the equipment running, and hope to get one with this one. This one was a pretty expensive one, um, and I'm not at liberty to share the customer name. They were pretty,
Okay.
but I'll be able to actually show videos because the model itself is open, and I have a separate Siemens controller that I've been using for development. So may not be able to show their particular product, but yeah, would love to, I kind of have a standard system with that, and the Weintek would be perfect for that. What it is a 25-pin cable that comes out from the IO and connects to any model, right? And then you just have to write the program for that model. And some of the pins are kind of the same for everything. It'll basically do somewhere around 10 in, 10 out. And then you have things like probably you'll have a light stack and maybe an e-stop, MCR. I always put those in my trainers. But yeah, but this
That would
would
be
be a
cool to
great
see.
model for that, because the cost, that's the other thing about Weintek people don't realize. I think compared to some of the big boys, right? Significantly cheaper. And cheaper is a bad word, but less expensive,
Right.
right? With every bit of the features. Every bit of the features. Yeah.
More value, right?
Yep. More value. That's right.
Yeah, it's I often the old adage, and again I don't love the word cheap, but right, the old adage of cheap, fast, and good. You pick two, right? And I think we might be the rare exception that you can pick all three, right? With our stock, with our capabilities, and with our pricing structure, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too.
And I'm going to speak up for this company that I work with in Miami. Everything they buy is based on cheap. They buy.
And you have some of those customers that prioritize that out of the other two.
That's right.
Um,
And so
and then
every HMI now in that plant is Weintek, and they based it on price and, free software and things like that. Even their PLCs, they buy all used. They go to, which has made all their vendors mad. They go, get somebody to spec a motion control system, PLC, whatever, and then sometimes buy the components online, which has made their vendors not want to visit them anymore. But all the Weintek's are new. Yeah, they buy them new. Yeah.
I guess I want to mention, I saw a post from Vinny a while back where he had already installed a system and a Weintek HMI and some other stuff, and then you needed to add, and Vinny, correct me if I'm wrong, you needed to add some additional functionality, and you were able to just kind of pop that code assist onto the HMI and not have to add a PLC to the system.
Yeah,
So
kind of. I mean, it was,
kind of?
well, it had a PLC that, a cost-effective PLC.
Okay.
And basically, everybody's programmed to click PLC, and it's brutal. But all it was doing was scaling 4 analog inputs at the time and putting them on a little screen. And that started with a low cost, even lower cost than these. Little screen, a sub $200 screen, and it just, and I'll speak to the other side of Weintek. Frank's guy buys whatever the cost-effective line is. I'd buy all CMTXs, which are the most expensive ones, but it's because of if you go into a factory with 1 million HMIs, nobody really cares. But when the customers we work with, the person writing the check is the one using it. So sex appeal means a little something. And a CMTX looks like a tablet, your regular smartphone. So that helps with capacitive touch stuff. But Anyways, yeah, that case we had that, and then we moved to using the 4.3-inch screen, and then got requests to build that out past 4 sensors. And then when you're in the other PLC software, it's copy paste 16 times and try to update all those references and fixed memory addresses, and then you're still limited if you want to start doing cool stuff. And I don't like reprogramming programs for everyone. I'd rather have them touch stuff in the screen and set it up the way they want. So that's where, like, okay, if we do this in CodeSys, we can write the whole thing in no time, and then all these extra options are a piece of cake. And so we kept that PLC because it's cheap, and Weintek doesn't offer a, you guys got some good IO modules, but you still don't have a good way to get really cost-effective analog inputs. So we just left that PLC in there and turned it into remote IO over, I think, Modbus TCP or whatever, and then use the Weintek HMI with CodeSys on it to run the entire CodeSys program instead.
Well, I appreciate that, and we should talk offline, because Nikki mentioned we just lowered prices. One of the things we just lowered prices on was our analog inputs and outputs. So
yeah,
so
it's
that may not have cycled down to you guys yet, but because it just happened 2.5-3 weeks ago. But yeah, so we realized we weren't as cost competitive on the analog side, and so we lowered our prices by, doing the math in my head really quickly, fairly significantly, over 20%, I think. So
yeah, we could talk about it. Yeah, that one, it was, and part of it was already there.
Yeah,
right. And the point I wanted to bring up was that you didn't actually have to add any additional hardware to the system.
No, I didn't change
when
anything.
the customer requested more functionality, right? So
right, the only hardware I needed was my my little gift card in the mail.
Yeah, so we do have some feedback here. Vinny would like to move to virtual or software based, being able to get his license instead of the scratch and sniff card in the mail.
yeah, it's it's a good idea.
But yeah, no, it was
really noted.
It's really it's really easy to do. I mean, it takes 10 seconds to activate it, and yeah, that little bit of an upgrade in price from the really low cost screen that it was using before. That thing was 128 by like 70 pixels, and then you go up to this, which is 800 by 480, which is honestly too much for a 4-inch screen. You got to ship the things with a stylus so they can still hit everything. But it was nice to be able to pack all that flexibility in and go back to CodeSys, which is what you use for all the other systems anyways. So it's a nice, familiar environment.
Cool. And I think, part of the shipping the card is kind of, we treat, even though we've been developing and doing R&D and making our own software this whole time, we really Weintek considers itself a hardware company. And so same thing with like not charging for software licenses as a recurring fee. It's all purchased like hardware because it's all just a one-time cost. You don't have to plan for, or your customers, plants have to pay these recurring fees every year. That currently most people are moving in the opposite direction. They're going from fixed one-time fees or lifetime licenses or perpetual licenses to subscriptions.
Yeah, and that was a nice license too. That I know. I don't know if you guys touched on it, but having even that little 4-inch screen, which is pretty to hit a price point type thing. All the CMT, they all have dual LAN ports, and then you can unbridge those, which is what we do. So when we ship them, we used to use LAN 2 for our stuff, but then once you put the CodeSys on, CodeSys takes over LAN 1, and then LAN 2 becomes the customer network. And so all of our stuff stays separate. The LAN 2 is just set to DHCP. They can plug their own internet in, enter in the easy access code, activate that, and then they have remote access. And I mean, on those systems, we don't really need remote access to the code, but if we needed to, we could as well.
This is great. It's almost like Vinny, you kind of led me right. As you can see, I changed slides. You kind of led me right into the hardware component, and you're exactly right. The CMTX series, that's the series that we promote. The older IAE series is in the process of moving towards end of life. A lot of the products already have. CMTX series is new but somewhat mature. We've had those for multiple of those models in excess of 5 years. But they've got fast processors. They're all gigahertz quad core processors, tons of memory. They're all set up, whether you're buying the standard series or the advanced, they're all going to have dual Ethernet ports, separate NICs, dual serial ports. And so from a hardware standpoint, there's, again, a lot of bang for your buck, a lot of punch there, so to speak.
And they're fast. You don't have to wait for the pop-ups.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up, because I it's not something I think about, but when I get that question fairly often. I mean, the amount of times I get a call where somebody says, "Hey, how fast is?" I mean, even on like boot up, right? How fast is your screen boot up? You know, what I'm using is taking 30, 45 seconds, 2.5 minutes, you know, whatever it is to boot up. And so it's interesting. Or like I said, when I'm with a customer in person and I power the unit up initially into our demo program, the amount of times, you know, I get the engineer saying, "Wow, that booted up really fast. Like, is that normal, or do you just have a special program?" And no, that's normal. I see it all the time. So the power, there's a ton of power there.
I think now, you know, people do have this expectation that we use a lot of these devices at home, right? And we stream a lot of things, and I've gotten really used to really fast internet. So when I have really slow internet, like I've freaking internet on United last night on the way home, I paid $8 to be able to barely like open a web page and wait for it to load. And you take it for granted that things work smoothly and fast, usually now on these modern devices, right? On your iPad or on my iPhone, like you click on something. And so my tolerance for waiting has gotten really low. Like the first time we were using the internet, I was like waiting for pictures to rasterize, right, on the screen. And that was okay then. Now it's not so much. People don't have this tolerance for just like clicking and then waiting for something to happen. They want it to happen fast. And I think for operators, you know, it's nice for them to be able to do that too, and not have these like micro moments of frustration when they're dealing with their machine or whatever.
So another question, Keith, maybe you know this, probably 30 years ago, I used to have to do, it wasn't my choice, but do a lot of Maple systems.
Mm-hmm.
And Maple Systems software looked sort of like what EasyBuilder is. It had some things in common. There were some really downsides to it. A lot of times you had to stack a whole bunch of things because there weren't tools for like displaying messages. So you'd stack a bunch of messages and then assign visibility to the individual messages to different numbers. And this is 94, 95 time frame. And I know things have changed a lot, but what I found is the EasyBuilder software is pretty intuitive, very easy to use. Definitely the addressing for all the different PLCs, there's easy ways, you know, there's good instructions on how to get the tags in there and addresses and things like that. I was just wondering if they had anything to do with that original Maple Systems software, whatever it was. I don't even remember the name of it, from the 90s or
probably EB8000 would be my guess, the kind of predecessor to EasyBuilder Pro. So yeah, I mean, just to describe, Maple Systems has been a partner of ours for a long time. If you go back to that time frame, they actually were quote unquote brand labeling our product. We manufactured it. They rebranded our software and our hardware. And there's still some of those in the wild, right? That is going away and has been for years as those older products go away. And really they're just a large distributor partner of ours, right? So they sell other products. If you look on their website, you can see they sell other products, much like all of our distributors. But they're a large Weintek distributor, for sure, and a good partner of ours. Yeah.
okay.
But that software was switched, like EasyBuilder Pro came out some years after that original software, right?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, so there was an EB5000, then an EB8000, and then we've been on EasyBuilder Pro for quite a while. I think the other thing, and I'll use this as a jumping off point, we didn't design it that way, but you know, one of the things I've been really impressed with over the last you know, time that I've been here is, you know, I get calls from people who have, because our product is very we like to say they're tanks, and they really are. I run into them all the time where they've been in the wild for 15, 18, 20 years, things like that. I get calls from customers that say, hey, I found you online. I've got this old unit. I need to get it into a newer model. And they'll give me a part number that I've got to look up. I don't even recognize it. It's old enough, right? And so we've got a path to, in almost 95% of those cases, there's a path to take that 15-year-old model and convert those softwares up and get you into a new model with Easy Builder Pro, excuse me, with minimal rework, right? I mean, there's a process there. And I don't think there's a whole lot of manufacturers of automation components that can say, hey, I can take something from 15 years ago, 2 versions of software ago, and allow you to upgrade it into our modern one with, like I said, minimal rework. And so I've been pretty impressed with that. From our standpoint, because I've been in automation for a long time, and I've been on the Rockwell side and the Siemens side, and been all around with regard to that. But so it's pretty nice to be able to tell a customer, instead of just saying, sorry, you're out of luck, you're gonna have to redesign this whole thing into a new software because we cut it hard, that there's a path to do that. So and the funny thing is, 9 times out of 10, they're not calling because the unit failed. They're calling because they know it's old. And it's somebody being a little forward thinking, saying, at some point, I need to probably think about what happens if this goes down. So,
Yeah, I've seen some pictures. When I started, I just kind of tried to reach out to people and see who knew of us, and I got some pictures back of some really old units. I'm like, I would not show this as a sales tool because it looks terrible because it's from the 90s and it's got terrible resolution, and but that was state of the art at the time. And the fact that it's still out there running, I mean, I think says something to the quality of the hardware for sure. It looks like we got a little bit, we've got like 10 minutes left, but one thing you didn't mention, Keith, is our IoT gateways and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I don't have a slide for that. I apologize. But I mean, the gateways, here's the interesting thing, and I am by no means an IoT expert. All of our HMIs and or our gateways, and a lot of people don't realize we have a gateway product or a faceless or screenless HMI product. All of those devices operate on one software platform. So they all operate within Easy Builder Pro. They all have that driver base, that extensive driver base we talked about. They've all got that kind of protocol conversion built into them. So, I've got a good amount of customers that utilize either the gateways or the HMIs to do protocol conversion. If you've got a system, that you need to bring in serial Modbus and be able to talk out Ethernet IP, you've got that capability with the HMI without going out and buying, another appliance or another piece of hardware to be able to handle that conversion. And so we got a lot of customers use our gateways for that. Almost all of our devices, have the capability from an IoT standpoint of putting MQTT data up to the cloud. And it's an interesting thing because it's a common question I get when I'm talking to customers is, well, how do I, what methodology do you have to get data out? And again, back to the kind of flexibility of design, there's a lot of ways, right? If you want to push MQTT data up to the cloud or to your own server, you can do that. With our advanced series, if you want it to act as an OPC-UA server and push data out that or communications out that way, you can. Our advanced series has the capability to be, a DB server or do SQL queries, things like that. So there's a lot of ways to kind of get that information in and out. And of course, you can use the HMI, you can use the gateway. There's a ton of flexibility there.
And then I want to throw in one more. You mentioned this earlier, I think, but the secure remote access capability. So without having to add a separate remote access appliance to your cabinet, it's again one-time kind of $99 activation, and you can now securely, like, remotely access both the HMI and then also a connected PLC. Right. So I think there's a lot of kind of hidden features that you don't have to add extra hardware, but you can activate these software features without a subscription.
Right. It's kind of that a la carte methodology. And I thought it was great that you mentioned that the whole world kind of seems to be going to this subscription model, and we're doing the opposite, which I love, right? Because I think we're getting subscription to death, so to speak.
Yeah.
But
Every
and Vinny,
every month I'm like, wait a minute, what was that subscription? Like, do I still need this?
right, and Vinny mentioned it, right? So I think he sounds like he's used it. Easy Access is our secure remote VPN. It basically takes our HMI or our gateway or our faceless HMI and turns it into a VPN gateway. And when I say gateway, I mean that it allows you to not only securely access the HMI, but also the machine network behind it. So if you need to get, pass through to your PLC, whether that be over the Ethernet, over that LAN port or serially, you can do a serial pass through to get to your serial devices. And it's a very low cost one-time activation, similar to Codis's. And it's easily deployable in the field, right? It's something that the customer can do as long as they've got an internet connection. It's highly secure. 256-bit AES encryption, 2048 RSA encryption. So it's a secure VPN that's extremely affordable and easy to deploy because it doesn't require a separate piece of hardware to do it, right? It's an activation you add to an existing piece of Weintek hardware. So have you used Easy Access much, Vinny, or is it just kind of there in case you need it?
No, I've used it, and we have a couple projects. We have a different product on bigger projects we use just because it's a little nicer UI and it has a little more feature for what we need. But
Sure.
For the simpler ones though, like this, it's great because that one's just a little cost prohibitive.
Right.
Yeah, right. I mean,
it's real simple. Yeah, you set up a forwarding thing to the PLC, and there's just a little icon you click, and it's automatically there.
Yeah, it's kind of back to the a la carte methodology. It is a basic VPN connection that is inexpensive and secure, right? It doesn't have a million bells and whistles like some of the products out there, but it also doesn't cost $1,000, right? So
no,
yeah.
And the nice thing too is that it can be added in the field.
Right.
A customer can send you a screenshot of that code on the screen. You can get them the information, and as long as they have their internet connected, they enter in a few details, and it pops up, and you're able to get in then and do it. And of course, for what the license costs, they can't afford to pay you to even walk out of the door. So
right.
It's a nice thing that they don't necessarily have to get immediately. But these days, especially the systems we're using it on, those people want to see their screen remotely. So
yeah,
it's a nice option for that. And then for when we do some of the other systems, and we do use the Weintek, but we use the other remote access stuff, then of course having VNC and everything makes that really easy.
Yeah. So you mentioned VNC. Have you used WebView or CMT Viewer?
I use CMT Viewer just when I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
But I use Ixon secure remote access devices, and they just have a VNC client built into them. So the thing where that's really nice is that people just open up that app and just touch HMI, and it's instantly up.
Yeah.
Nice. So that's a company that focuses specifically on that market, right? And so they build a lot more features into that because that's their main thing, which makes a whole lot of sense.
And easy access is easy. You connect to Easy Access. You have to pick your server, which is kind of annoying, but there should be like a global setting in there that says, look, I'm never going to connect to the Chinese server. I want everywhere else. And then it just saves that, which it does save your last selection, but it's always there. And then of course, when it says China, people just get weirded out, but you select your thing and then you just hit connect. And then there's just a little icon you hit for screen and it pops up. So it's like one more click. It's not hard at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't force that to the American server, the AWS servers for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it defaults to it, but it's a drop-down box people can touch, and one more thing to go wrong.
Well, that's kind of about the end of our hour. Go ahead and hopefully people can see my screen. The next webinar, April 11th, and I have no idea what the subject is going to be, as usual by this point. These used to be once a week or once every 2 weeks, and then I've kind of gotten into once a month and looking ahead a couple of months, several weeks. I really don't know what topic I'm going to cover. Sometimes it's just me, right? I just sit there and I may do the Fisher technique thing. If everything's done and I have the model running, may talk about that product, since I don't know that I've ever covered that specifically, but I have a lot of video of all my little red toys running. So yeah.
Well, I would love to see that, so I'll be sure to join. And whether that's the topic you cover next time or not, I appreciate the informative nature of these, as well as just, the slight casualness, which is nice. I feel like a lot of webinars, you just get talked at for an hour. And it's usually more sales pitch than anything else. And being able to, just genuinely talk about some things, learn from each other. I really appreciate your style and your community, Frank. So thank you so much. And thank you for having us on.
Well, thank you guys. And yes, the point is to learn something, right? It's not just to necessarily see pretty, boxes and screens and things like that. It's to actually learn something. And I've got a big page of notes just from this, right, webinar that I took lots of notes, and we'll be exploring a lot of this stuff in more depth later. But thank you everybody for showing up, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.